Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel? You're on mute.
Good morning. In accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order of March 17th, 2020, this meeting is being conducted remotely and all public comment will be taken telephonically. Individuals wishing to offer public comment may do so by calling 213-306-3065. Again, that number is 213-306-3065. When prompted, please enter 187-8750-439 followed by the pound sign. Again, that's 187-8750-439 followed by the pound sign. You will have 2 minutes per item, up to a total of 5 minutes for all items you wish to speak on. When asked by the board secretary, please identify the item you are speaking on or whether you're just offering general public comment. Also, it's important that if you're listening to the board meeting on a computer, when it's your turn to speak, please turn down the computer so that we don't get any feedback. If we might at some point during the meeting need to recess for technical difficulties or if we lose a quorum, and we'll make that announcement accordingly. At this point, I turn it back over to you, Madam Board Secretary.
I will now conduct the roll. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Present.
4 members present and a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to open the meeting today with a few brief remarks. First, June is Pride Month, and 2021 marks the 10th anniversary of LGBTQIA+ month in the city of Los Angeles and the 51st anniversary of LA Pride. Pride Month is time to show support, listen, and learn. It's a time to take action and give back. It's a time to celebrate love for ourselves and for each other. It's also a time to acknowledge the sacrifices made to allow every person to live and love authentically and freely. I'm fond of urging people to take note, not only of the history that we learned, but the history that we live, along with that which we may be privileged to make. It's through that lens that I sat transfixed 8 years ago, listening to our 44th president deliver his second inaugural address. Toward the middle of his remarks, he said, "We the people declare today that the most evident of truths, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still, just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall." Through Seneca Falls and Selma and Stonewall, a simple alliteration, but one that for the first time saw an American president acknowledge the heroic and harrowing struggle for gay rights squarely alongside and in the larger context of the nation's preeminent movements to expand civil rights. I'm reminded today of its heroes, sung and unsung: Marsha P. Johnson, Larry Kramer, Harvey Milk, Brenda Howard, and Edie Windsor, just to name a few, who, each in their own way, confronted unspeakable hatred, bigotry, ignorance, and even violence, both at the hands of the state and at the hands of others. Even as we welcome the celebration of so many victories, so much remarkable progress in our understanding and acceptance of LGBTQAI+ rights, it's also important to be mindful of the work that got us here and the work that remains ahead. On this day, we proudly stand behind our commitment to a diverse and inclusive workplace that allows every employee to feel safe and protected. We take pride in our LGBTQIA plus employees and celebrate their service to the department and our city. Now, in addition to my own reflections, Mr. Romalo has asked me to share that this year, LA Pride's theme is Thrive with Pride, and that for the first time ever, LA Pride is partnering with local nonprofit Big Sunday on Pride Makes a Difference, a 30-day calendar of events focusing on volunteering, community service, and donation collections. From June 20th to the 30th, Pride Makes a Difference will be focusing on protecting the environment. We're looking forward to helping promote these activities and making a difference through employee volunteerism and action. We'll be sharing LA Pride's calendar of activities on our social media channels and sharing information with our employees on how to take part in everything from community cleanups to donation collections. Other LA Pride events coming up this month include Thrive with Pride concert that will be live streamed on the TikTok app on June 10th, an LGBTQ plus Pride Night at Dodger Stadium on June 11th, a Thrive with Pride celebration on ABC 7 on June 12th, Universal Studios in Hollywood, Universal Studios Hollywood LGBTQ plus night on June 25th, and an LGBTQ plus movie night at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery the following evening. Our communications and public affairs staff will be sharing information with all of our employees about these events. We encourage everyone to show their love, support, and alliance with LGBTQIA plus community members throughout this Pride Month. Through it all, let's continue to lift each other up so we may thrive with pride and together build a stronger LA. That concludes my opening remarks for this morning. I simply want to determine if there are any commissioners that have anything to add or any remarks for the morning.
I have something. I have something separate. I just generally want to make a different comment, not about this topic, around what continues to be a very real and significant drought. And so I just am putting out a reminder that while LA is in really good shape thanks to our teams, and we don't see any problem meeting the demands for this year or even next year, the rest of the state is not so fortunate. And if we see potentially repeat dry conditions for much more prolonged periods, this is going to be very, very serious. And I think as a community and a society, we've become accustomed to these droughts, but we still have to all do our part. And so it's just a reminder that we need to conserve, we need to use water wisely, and we need to make sure we're not wasting. And so it's just an encouragement and a reminder to take the shorter showers, to fix the leaks you see, to report them, and to be water wise.
Thank you, Commissioner. We actually will have a report at the next board meeting on our water resiliency planning for the city of Los Angeles, but that is an important note. And hopefully everyone will heed your advice. Can we move on to general public comment?
Yes. The first public comment will be from Karen Carney Fillmore.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. I am actually calling from Northern California, where I live, and I'm calling just to get some direction and advice on whom I should speak with. My husband and I, well, my husband actually is the executor of a home there in Los Angeles that was lived in by his aunt, who passed away in 2015. We are throes of finally deciding to sell the house. We rented it. We never had tenants. It pretty much sat vacant. We've decided to sell it. And upon calling the LAPDW to LADWP to have the power turned on, we were told that there was a water balance of $79,000, which knocked us, of course, off of our. And we're trying to find. I have talked to customer service. 5 representatives. It's been escalated up to review and then escalated to field investigations. The challenge is that when she passed in 2015, I contacted LADWP with a copy of her death certificate and a letter asking to cut off all services and anything should be forwarded to us. I also learned, talking to another representative just a couple of days ago, that the DMV also informed the agency of her passing. They are telling me now we are in escrow. We just have to have the inspector check the electrical, which he can't do. We just need to turn it on for one day for him to do that. I am being told that in order to just turn it on for one day, I will have to pay $15,000. So my question is, they continue to bill a dead woman who, like I said, are on pass on April 15th, 2015. And we're told that we'd have to do the repair work if there was a leak. Obviously, there was a leak. We've done that. We've submitted the photographs and the receipts to the Metro desk to field investigation.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Is there I just have a technical question. Is there a way that we can get the speaker's address and telephone number and other information outside of on the phone, but outside of this live channel, so that we can follow up with her today on these issues?
Yes. Yes. Is Carissa able to get it?
Yeah. I would.
Thank you. I don't mean to cut you off. I just understand why you're here and want to make sure that we are able to respond to this today. So in addition to providing the information that our board secretary is going to ask you for, she'll also give you the number to the board office so that you can follow up directly with us if you do not get some better relief from customer service at the senior level today. We'll also directly look into this issue if that's okay.
I would greatly appreciate that. Happy to do that.
Ms. Carney Fillmore? Ms. Carney Fillmore?
Yes.
If you can please call our commission line at area code 213-36.
I'm sorry. Okay, 213.
367
1356. 1356. Okay.
And there'll be someone there to help you to get your information, and we will have senior management reach out to you.
Excellent. So when I call them, should I tell them that I spoke with you, members of the commission, and was asked to call? So
you call that number, they will know. They're monitoring the meeting.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so very much for your time, and I will give them a call right now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board President, that will now close all public comment.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much. I have just a few comments this morning. So first, as Board President McCLAIN-HILL said, we are pleased to join in celebrating June as Pride Month in the city of LA. And we were looking back, and we believe this is the first time that this board has recognized the celebration, and we find it especially fitting to do so. Members of the LGBTQIA+ communities are our customers, many times are our colleagues, and very often they're our friends and family members. And so we think it's very important that we join in celebrating this month, where we really look at the fabric that makes up Los Angeles, all Angelenos who should feel welcome and valued here. And we think it's an important celebration to recognize. So thank you very much for for your comments, Madam President. Last month, we completed our celebration of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, capped off by a visit from the Consul General of the Philippines in Los Angeles, Mr. Edgar Barraro Badejos. And he came to visit us. Our Vice President, SUSANA Reyes, arranged for the visit, and it was greatly appreciated. It was really a nice culmination to a month-long celebration. Consul General Badejos came and met with about a dozen of our more than 600 Filipino-American employees. Had a nice meeting here, the chance to folks to greet him. I was quite amazed when we went around the room how many of members of our staff had either gone to the same college he'd gone to in the Philippines or had a lot in common with his background. And so it was a nice conclusion. We talked about the importance and the contributions of our Filipino employees to serving the needs of the city of Los Angeles and delivering water and power, and how we really look forward to continuing celebrating our inclusivity and diversity, and really looking at the contributions of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community in Los Angeles and in this region. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brian Wilbur. Brian, as you know, is taking over for Andy Kendall in the very near future. Brian's going to briefly describe, just tell you about some expansions of geothermal power available to the city coming from Nevada, and also bring you up to date on our internal lineman's rodeo. We're having competition amongst our crews coming up next week. Brian, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marty. Just the two things real quick. The Northern Nevada geothermal portfolio is comprised of 10 geothermal projects ranging from 5 to 24 megawatts. That's going to bring essentially a total of 178 megawatts by 2023. So May 5th, we have the completion of the McGinnis Hills Phase 3 expansion, which is bringing on an additional 21.25 megawatts of geothermal to DWP. The completion of this project is a big step for us to getting to 100% clean energy future. So unlike wind and solar, the geothermal is continuous. So we can use it for our base load renewable power, where it's not just when the sun is shining or when the wind is blowing. This brings us currently to 126 megawatts that we have now. And we're looking to, this is approximately 4.7% of our customer annual energy needs. And so this should get us to our 80% renewable by 2030. With added to our other non-greenhouse gas resources, this will result in about a 97% carbon-free energy by 2030. And the other one is our internal rodeo. So this will be our first annual. Reggie, could you put up the flyer real quick? So if you've been to our annual rodeo, it's a major event for us out at the Truesdale Training Center, where we invite competition from utilities all over the western side of the United States here, mostly in California. And this is our qualifier for the International Rodeo, which is held in Kansas City every year. Due to COVID, last year's was canceled. The International is still going to go on this October in Kansas City. So we're doing just a qualifier of our in-house teams on June 16th. This will be the first time. It's just going to be our folks with no real fanfare, no real public event. But we are still continuing with the rodeo so we can move forward and represent in Kansas City, LADWP.
Thanks, Brian. And certainly, we'll make sure the flyer gets to all the board members. If you have the opportunity, I know it's on a Wednesday, I believe, but if you have the opportunity to make it out there, it's quite a sight to see. Lastly, we have a very important announcement from our interim IT chief, Rich Harisick, who has some good news to deliver. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I would just like to inform the board that we successfully completed our customer care and billing and mobile workforce management cutover activities over the Memorial Day weekend. That really event, which was the culmination of really years plus, included several phases over a 3-day cutover timeline, and we were all completed on schedule and as planned. And the billing and system operations are actively being monitored, and all critical functions are normal. So it's really a lot of the effort is post cutover, and all internal CCB an MWM application functionality was released and are fully operational, I should say. That includes the external interactive voice response, our web services, LADWP.com. They've all been restored. The customer information system infrastructure and technical teams completed the quote-unquote build activities for the reporting infrastructure, which is really how this upgrade really impacted the most. And all operational reporting functionality has been released for operations. So support for the first weeks that we're in right now on the upgraded system is being provided through what we call hypercare, a hypercare support approach. And so business units are able to get support on technical issues that we knew were going to happen. They log in and they get a dedicated phone line to our service desk to support through that general supported number, and anything that needs to be escalated, there's a special place in the CIS team to handle those things during operational hours. And the CIS systems analysts and the Oracle team are providing real-time support to troubleshoot with users, and there have been things to trouble support, and they deal with them as they happen. And all of those things that have been escalated have been handled by the ITSD CIS system analysts and are being done so on a continuous basis. I do want to give credit where credit is due, because this was a significant undertaking for the department that required support from many business units, not only ITSD, but customer services, financial services, power system, water system, and a successful upgrade would not have been possible without their support. The core IT CIS upgrade project team included many dedicated DWP staff, but there are a few that I'd like to recognize. At the top of that list, the very top, and clearly recognized amongst all his peers on the team working on this, is Terry Hallberg from our ITS CIS project team. He's a project manager, and alongside of him, Anime Peji. It also included ITSD CIS infrastructure lead Helen Hoek, and our integration lead Homan Mercado Devandi, reports lead David Yu, application support Irene Hayoshi, and user acceptance testing and post cutover support Sung Shin Lau. So we have a ton of very dedicated, very talented people that made this cutover possible, and they passed with flying colors. And I know it was a topic and a point of much concern, and we were on the phone literally the entire weekend, and it really was akin to a moonshot, and we returned to the Earth safely.
Thank you, Rich, and congratulations to the team.
Yep.
Great work. That's the completion of my report.
Thank you, Marty. And Rich, as you were providing that report, I was thinking moonshot. And so appreciate the analogy. It is really quite something for us to get that piece of join in acknowledging, congratulating, and frankly thanking the dozens and dozens and dozens of people involved in making this happen, and in particular those individuals that you singled out in your report. So thank you all. Next, I am not aware of any motions for future consideration other than my own, which will be an amendment of the board rules to require items that the department puts out for public comment to be delivered to the board simultaneously with their being put out for review for public comment. Just by way of explanation, I noted that there was a great deal of consternation, to say the least, at the receipt of our nearly 600-page water management plan last board meeting. And in talking with some of the senior folks at the organization in thinking about how to better facilitate board review without impacting the department's timeline for the completion of any number of documents that are either that are compliance related, either by virtue of state mandate or EIRs or other significant documents that ultimately require board action. The best and most efficient way to move forward to give board members both a heads up and an opportunity for timely review would be for board members for the board office to be made aware of those documents, and board members to receive copies of those documents should they wish at the time that they're put out for public comment. That will provide ample time for board members to become aware of what will be landing on our desk, and also ample time to set up briefings or get questions responded to or track the process, so that when we get the completed document, we've had a much greater opportunity to become familiar with it. So on the next agenda, there will be a motion seeking to amend the board rules to require that change in department protocols vis-a-vis the board. Moving to comments from the ratepayer advocate on agendized items. Dr. Pickle, is there anything that you would like to discuss at this juncture, or would you prefer to hold your comments for some later time in the meeting?
I would like to hold my comments on item 21 until later in the meeting, unless it's appropriate now. Two, I would like to note items 12 through 15 are core components of the pass-through mechanisms for both water and power rates.
Thank you. And it's certainly appropriate to hold on 21. I will be pulling that item special for discussion. So thank you for that. Board Secretary, do we have anything from neighborhood councils?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Thank you. As I indicated, I'll be pulling item 21. Are there any other items that are being called special? I know that we will need to vote on items 20 and 19 and 20, I think, separately. We have a commission recusal with respect to those two items. Is that correct, Commissioner Lair?
Excuse me, can you
I indicated that you're not voting on items 19 and 20. You are recused as to those two items. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Then I'd like to see if we can get a motion to approve items 10, 11, 12, I'm sorry, 10 through 18. Can we have a motion for approval of items 10 through 18?
Motion to approve, Susanna.
Second.
Thank you. Would you call the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner Lair,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady,
Aye.
4 ayes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Commissioner Lair, well, let me ask you, Joe, how do we affect the recusal, or should we reserve those items to the end of the meeting? Does that make the most sense? It seems like that might be logistically the easiest way to move forward.
Yes, usually in the days of live, the recusing commissioner would step out of the room, but if Commissioner Lair just went on stop video for a moment, and we'll ask her to rejoin as soon as that vote is taken. That would probably be the most effective way to do it.
Or can we simply vote on, can we consider item 21 and the rest of the agenda and take it up at the end before going into closed session?
We
That way
certainly
we don't have to go on and off.
Yes, we certainly can do that.
Okay, then we'll do that. So we will defer items 19 and 20 until we go until shortly before moving into closed session. And we will take up item, I'm sorry. I guess we will take up item 21 after our after our management reports. So we will start with item 8A.
Thank you. And we have Nazir Bosley and his team. Nazir heads up our corporate safety organization, and he'll be doing our presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Appreciate it. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you for having us here today. This morning, our presentation also includes an update on our arc flash injury that we experienced early this month. With that, we have Dan Ashelman, who's manager of Power System Safety, and he will give us a presentation, an update on that accident. I will turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Nazir, and thank you, commissioners. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to present on this incident and for the commissioners' interest in our employees and the PPE that protects them. What we're seeing here is an image of an e-box. It's a piece of equipment that's part of our underground distribution system. And on April 27th this year, our employees experienced an arc flash incident while performing switching in an e-box, much like this one. 4 of our employees sustained injuries as a result of that incident. Next slide, please. This photo shows the location of where that incident actually occurred in the early morning hours on April 27th. In the center of the photo, you see the vault with the lid removed. 2 of our employees were in that vault, and 2 of our employees were close to the vault opening at the time of the event. Most of the energy was within that substructure. We believe PPE not only lessened the extent of our employees' injuries, it probably saved their lives. And as of today, all of our employees have been released from the hospital. The 2 that were in that substructure are still undergoing treatment from Grossman Burn Center. Next slide, please. The video you're about to see here depicts an arc flash event. It's created in a lab environment. And as part of our PPE testing, this video, or as part of their testing, this video is provided by one of our vendors. If you can go back and go ahead and play that video. During the test, you can see a large amount of light, heat, molten metal. You see fragments being ejected past the mannequin. In this type of a test, incident energy is measured in calories, and in the box on the bottom left, it indicates the level that this particular garment is tested against. Next slide, please. And here we see our high voltage rubber gloves. Our employees use these as primary insulation while working hands-on high voltage. They also provide a high level of protection from an arc flash. The face shield on the right with the hard hat attached is designed to guard against the light, heat, and debris like we just saw in that previous video. The photos you're about to see are the photos of our employees' actual PPE from April's event. We believe it was exposed to energy far beyond its tested rating. Next slide.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Wow. Just the face shield. Is that rated to the same degree as everything else, or is it equivalent protection as the body?
The face shield has is rated to protect against what we have determined is the appropriate hazard. So it is rated for that. But this instance was, we believe it may have had higher than normal exposure in this event.
Okay.
So in this slide here, you see the high voltage rubber gloves. Again, right, they're burned through There's some arc flash damage on them. We believe that was part of why these employees removed these gloves, that there was other material within that substructure that was burning and continued to burn that. And the face shield that you see on the right was obviously completely destroyed. It did protect the employee, but you can see that it is, yeah, speaks for itself. Next slide, please. This is AR clothing, is also PPE. It's made of a special fabric that won't continue to burn when it's exposed to an arc flash. See the coveralls, a hoodie in the center, and an undershirt. This is what's pictured here. Next slide, please. The coveralls on the right have been completely burned open. The hoodie in the center was burned through. You can see on the left shoulder. And the undergarment, the undershirt shows some slight burning on the left shoulder as well. When something goes wrong, PPE is our last line of defense. Without all this PPE protecting our employees, this incident would likely have resulted in much more serious injuries and possibly a fatality. So that's all I have. Thank you, commissioners, for your time.
If I could add, this accident, just like any other accident, will be investigated. There is a process in place. There's a formal investigation committee has been formed, comprised of labor, management, corporate safety, system safety. They're tasked to identify root causes, contributing factors. All that information will be disseminated to all parties involved to making sure that anything similar will not happen again. So there's an opportunity to learn from this accident, and we're taking that seriously so we can fix whatever it is that is broken to prevent reoccurrence.
I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but I just have a couple of questions, and thank you so very much for the review of the accident of the most recent accident. Those pictures are harrowing, to say the least. Is there a category or ranking of certain kinds of incidences? And if so, how would that particular incident be ranked in terms of how we track things? And then secondly, with respect to the investigation that you referenced, how long does that investigation take? And depending on the outcomes, what occurs at the conclusion of the investigation?
Thank you. There are different types of investigation. The investigation that safety groups are involved, these are they're safety investigations. So there's no discipline that comes as a result of these investigations. Our purpose, our goal is not to identify who made the mistake. Our goal is to identify what system failed. But I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking that there was discipline involved. I was just curious as to, what are the outcomes, assuming, different scenarios in terms of findings. Very good. Yeah, we call this investigation a formal. The reason for that, when we have a serious incident that there was a potential for injuries, or there was injuries as a result of those, we form a formal committee. As per our admin manual, we formed this committee, and there's membership is going to be labor as well as corporate safety, system safety. And it takes approximately, there's a time limit of 30 days that they have to finalize and determine the root causes as per admin manual. Sometimes some of the investigations are more complex and it could take longer. We want to just encourage our committees not to rush through. We want to find the actual root causes. We want to make sure that they dig deep enough that we know the actual causes. So usually it's approximately 30 days for an investigation of similar incident for the results to come out. When the results are out, they They get a report together identifying all the root causes and contributing factors, and then that report is redacted to protect all the parties involved, and that information is shared through the Office of Safety to the division that was involved in this accident, along with a list of the action items, corrective action items that we will track. Working with JSI, we track all of those corrective actions to make sure they are done in a timely manner. So this is a formal investigation process, and we do have another process, and we call it informal. The reason we call it informal, it's not that it's any less important, it's just it was the less potential for injuries. And that informal investigations are done by system safety. They conduct the investigation, they determine the causes, they generate a report. The rest of the process is very similar. We track the corrective action items and work with the divisions to ensure that corrective actions are completed in a timely manner.
So if I could add real quick, you know, we don't always wait just for the results of the investigation to take action. In this case, you know, as soon as this accident happened, myself, Brian Wilbur, met with the Office of Safety to review, you know, basically what had taken place. And the Office of Safety, within a week of that, put out a bulletin for all staff to say that the action that these crews were doing at that time, we would no longer do with the circuit energized. So switching to drop the energized cable in an E-box, in this case, was an action that we would no longer do. And define what we could now do in that, you know, in an E-box during similar, you know, working. So there are some things we realized right away that, you know, this is a practice we need to stop. And when that happens, we take that action immediately while the investigation is going on. All accidents, whether it's just a person spraining their ankle on a job, get investigated. That gets done by the local management. But, you know, it's one thing that, you know, all of these jobs have come with hazards, but every one of these hazards can be mitigated. And that's, you know, something that we review in training constantly. And, you know, in my maybe probably biased view, we have the best training in the world. So, and the Office of Safety does an excellent job in leading these investigations. So it's no doubt in my mind that when this is done, we will have the cause and we will, you know, take action to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So Andy, I just have one question. Are near misses, are they also investigated? Because that's important, an important step in reducing, you know, occurrences of serious incidents, right?
Well, a near miss would mean there would be no actual accident, but yeah, those are reviewed by the Joint Safety Institute. Those are all reviewed, and then those are distributed throughout the system. And whether if it's a power system specific, or if it's a general type action where it would benefit all of the systems, then those are sent out throughout the systems and then reviewed at safety meetings so that it's covered, and so everybody benefits by what happened. So yeah, every one of those is reviewed system-wide.
Thank you.
Nazir.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it. If there are no other questions regarding the incident, we'll move on. Our next portion of presentation is a safety performance benchmarking. Now, benchmarking allows us to track our safety records over time. For today's presentation, we are benchmarking our OSHA recordable rates with other utilities doing similar work. Now, incident rates, comparing it with other utilities, not only it allows us to compare our safety performance with other utilities doing similar work, it also allows us to set priorities and improve our safety performance. So in this chart that we are looking at, this is a survey or benchmarking that was done by APPA, that is American Public Power Association. They have more than 2,000 members that they're all publicly owned municipality, very similar to DWP, various sizes. In 2020, in this survey, 329 utilities participated in this benchmarking survey. They're categorized by size from left to right based on their exposure hours. And we see that DWP numbers are 4.54 for the year 2020. In comparison with other utilities participating in this survey, we rank approximately average. These are OSHA recordable numbers, meaning that these injuries resulted in more than just first aid care or employees lost consciousness, or it resulted in days away from work or restricted duties. Those are the criteria for recordability. Next slide, please. And to get a better understanding of our safety performance, we look at the historic numbers too, just to give us a better understanding of how we are doing safety performance-wise. And this is our historic numbers. Same utilities participated in this survey as well. This is 2017, 18, and 19. And on the right, we can see that Department of Water and Power for the same time period, we're reporting 5.6, 6.0, 5.5. It is definitely higher than almost all of the utilities participating in this survey. Just as a note, the rates are calculated using an OSHA standard formula. This is based on 100 injuries per 100 employees in a 1-year time period. Next slide, please. We also benchmark our numbers using the BLS. BLS is an independent organization that collects and analyzes and disseminates information for all the government and private sector. So we use their data to benchmark our safety records. In this case, on the screen, we're looking at on the very left side, that's all industries for the year 2017, 18, 19. Those are OSHA recordables nationwide. They're reporting 3.1, 3.1, 3.0. To break it down a little bit for private utilities, and now they're reporting lower numbers for the same time period, 2.0, 1.9, 2.2. And local governments are reporting very similar numbers as water and power. Local governments are the city services similar to City of Los Angeles for all of the services they provide. And to the right of it, that's local government utilities. Now, these are all of the local government municipalities, all the services, utility services they provide. Also, during the same time period, their numbers are very similar to Department of Water and Power. On the right 3 columns, we're looking at the breakdown of water and power into the 3 systems. Now, we have power system, water system, and joint system. If we notice on the joint system, we have a sharp drop in 2019 and corresponding rise in power system rates. And that's as a result that part of the joint system was transferred over in 2019 to be added to power system. So their numbers transferred as well. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, could you back up on that slide? I'm just curious about the large discrepancy or distinction between rates in power system versus water system. And when you say that part of joint systems went to power systems, that doesn't really tell me much, since I have no idea what part of joint systems went to power systems. So that's a question that I'd like to understand a little more about that. And then obviously I am interested in how we benchmark. I'm also interested in a little more detail, but I guess I'll get to that later, about the kinds of record keeping or how we're tracking our internal incidences. And finally, with respect to, there's a, I see, what is private utilities? Is that investor owned, or is that what that is?
That is correct. Investor owned and all utilities. So this could be power, water, gas, phone, cable. So all utilities that are investor owned, correct.
I see. Only because, again, without some more detail, it's hard for me to assess, what I should think about the nearly double rate of incidences reported by DWP over and against private utilities. And LG, that's local government utilities. So I guess we're on par with them. You'll probably tell me that local government is more, and LADWP is more transparent than the private utilities. Okay. All right. But those are the questions that I have in looking at this. And I'm curious about what's happening in the water system. That has numbers that, are beating the power system by quite a lot in every year. And what moved to the power system that would have impacted its numbers in 2019.
Very good. Thank you for that. The comparison with private utilities, not only, just as you mentioned, and that is correct, local governments, publicly owned utilities are more transparent with their numbers. The culture of reporting is definitely different, where we strongly encourage reporting. To do a comparison with private utilities, there is another difference. Is also the difference is that some of or most of their operation is outsourced, contracted out, where the injuries are also transferred to others, to contracting companies. So it's not showing in their numbers. In addition to that, another fact remains that some of these private utilities are far more advanced in their journey towards a safety management system, which we will cover later in this presentation. So they do report, some of them are more far advanced on their safety management maturity, so their numbers could be lower. But in addition to that, the culture of reporting in some utilities are completely different, where we strongly encourage reporting. In some companies, definitely the culture of reporting is to discourage reporting by giving incentives, employees not reporting minor injuries. So as far as capturing all of these data is recordable, all recordable injuries are we required to report that on our what they call Form 300 once a year to Cal OSHA. So if it meets the definition, the criteria for recordability, it gets documented through corporate safety, and that information, the summary of those accidents, are annually reported to Cal OSHA. And as far as the water system numbers being high, so the number of this is a ratio-based rates. The rates are based on ratios. So the rates on a smaller utility with fewer exposure hours are not exactly apple to apple with groups that are much larger or much more exposure hours, because the formula factors the exposure hours when we calculate the rates. So in other words, a single accident on a smaller utility has more significant impact on the rates of a smaller company than a larger company. So it could be on the water side, the exposure hours are less than power system, but that so the rates are definitely higher. So we can see that there is a lot of low impact, high frequency slip, trips, and falls included in that in those numbers.
Yeah, I'll just maybe underscore a couple of points that Nazir made. So the water system is really somewhat of at Water and Power a bit of a unicorn within the industry, certainly in the United States. I don't know of any other water utility that does their own trunk line work in all of the United States. And our capital program is probably literally an order of magnitude more. So we do a lot more, and that is in-house as well. So we do have benchmarking data for we survey the top about 12 or dozen, I should say, utilities, water utilities across the nation, and we're not the top, we're not the bottom, but part of that is because we are so unique in that regard. And as Nazir said, a lot of the work is because of sprains and strains. Our industry is different than in some regards to the power system. Our highest risk factor is really just moving dirt. Most of our work on the distribution side is underground, so we're digging a lot. We're digging a lot by hand, lifting things in and out of holes and things like that. So over a career that works on the body quite a bit. So we see just a lot of, just because of repetition and things like that. Fortunately, the number is going down, we believe, because of the programs we've put in place, as well as the things we're planning to do in the future. We're planning to do a range of motion study, or time of motion study, I should say, and relook at our factors that we have, our policies and procedures of how to put in pipe, and hope to continue to drive those numbers down.
So I just want to note also that there is a huge intersection with the Office of Safety and Workers' Comp and our Disability Office. Nasir, do you know if your data tracks with that of the workers' comp cases? Because we know that our annual cost of workers' comp is probably averages about $20 million a year. Do you know the percentage of OSHA reportable cases to that of the total cases that we have in the department? And how, I know workers' comp reports all injuries to your office, and that you determine which injuries are OSHA recordable, right? But the total OSHA recordables are not reported back to the workers' comp office. How is that data used again to further our, goal of reducing incidences, injuries, and illnesses that are recordable?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, correct. We link with workers' comp. We get those injury lists and cases from workers' comp, and there is a process in corporate safety that it's will be reviewed and determined if they're recordable, and if they're recordable, those injuries are documented and reported to Cal OSHA, as you stated. The one thing I wanted to add, the $20 million is only direct cost of workers' comp cost. There is the indirect cost could be 4 times as much that we are actually costing us. So the cost of these injuries are real. It's a lot of money. But as far as the information being relayed back to workers' comp, I'm not sure if that is done or not, but I can get that information for you. And right now, I don't have the exact total numbers of the cases, but that's easy to get. We keep track of that. I only had the rates for this comparison.
Well, perhaps in the future, Susana will have a risk management report, which will look at those issues.
That'll be good.
I think I'm very interested in delving a little deeper into our own safety management process. And Nazir, part of what I hear you saying is that some of this benchmarking that some of this benchmarking you'd like us to take with a grain of salt because it's not apples to apples. That said, we certainly can't ignore it, but even more importantly, I do believe that we will want to really look more carefully and regularly at our own management, as against our records or our trends year to year. Since if we are claiming a level of uniqueness in terms of some of these numbers, it seems like at a minimum, making sure that we are trending down and that we are mitigating to the maximum extent possible employee injury through our corporate safety management is the objective that I'd like to make sure that we are pursuing.
Thank you. If I can add to that, yes, the evaluation of injury and illness is a very important component of hazard identification and abatement, but we know and understand that's only one component. OSHA strongly advocates that we have to use multiple variables to effectively evaluate a safety performance. So for the performance indicators must include a lagging and leading indicators. What we just covered right now, these are lagging indicators, meaning that these are the events that happened in the past. Their injury rates, days away from work, worker cost cases. They tell us a lot. They tell us, how people got hurt and how badly they got hurt, but it does not tell us why they got hurt or how we can prevent similar accidents from happening in the future. So in order for us to forecast and anticipate these events, we have to track other metrics, leading indicators. Now, leading indicators are these measurable activities that when we monitor these activities, it allows us to identify hazards and implement control measures to mitigate and eliminate those hazards. So it's very proactive. And some of the example is, for example, earlier we talked about near miss program. Near miss by itself is lagging, but the action items that results as a near miss, those are, when we track those action items, those are leading indicators that will prevent future accidents. Attendance in the safety meetings, crew visitations, audits, inspections, these are all leading indicators. And for us, what are we doing to fix this? Can we change the next slide, please? One more. So this is safety management. Safety management does exactly that for us. It just transforms a proactive compliance-based program that relies heavily on lagging indicators, transforms it into a more proactive that is more of a risk management rather than just a compliance-based program. So SMS SMS system is a risk management strategy. It also includes hazard identification, and everybody within SMS is held accountable for their roles and responsibilities towards the safety management system. Next slide, please. So there's many benefits to a safety management system, but there are three main reasons that companies adopt and implement safety management system. Then number one, as OSHA calls it, the ethical reason, is because it's the right thing to do. It eliminates risk, it improves safety, it improves safety culture, it eliminates serious injuries and fatalities, it improves public and contractor safeties, it improves the relationship between employees and management. And the next reason is the cost and financial. Just like we talked about earlier, it reduces the worker comps cost, and it improves the productivity. There's a direct correlation between the enhanced safety performance and increased productivity. It also reduces the lost work days away from work due to injuries and employee retention. There's a number of employees that leave their companies going to looking for other companies where they offer better safety performance. The very last reason is improved compliance. It reduces fines and penalties that result as a result of injuries from OSHA and other regulatory agencies. It improves relationship with regulatory agencies. Also, it improves public image and public relations. Next slide, please. So a safety management system is based on Plan, Do, Check, and Act. It's also known as PDCA, or also it's called the Deming cycle. It's a continuous improvement cycle that entails a planning stage, implementation, a process for evaluation, and corrective actions. And this whole cycle is repeated again for continual improvement. Next slide, please. So these are all the elements that we have identified that has to be in place for an effective safety management system. So if we look at the planning stages, the planning part, it includes development of an initial plan. This initial plan will establish a framework for the safety management system. Also, this framework will include a roadmap with specific timelines for implementation of the plan. In addition, it also identifies the roles and responsibilities and organizational weaknesses and opportunities for improvement. And the next step is the implementation of the plan. And one of the key elements in this step is the management of change. And this management of change also includes the integration of safety and safety management system in all the other business processes. So just for example, integration of safety by design and human performance into planning and development and engineering processes. Following by the next step, the check, is the review process. One of the key elements in this phase is the audit process. The audit process is part of continuous improvement feedback loop to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of the SMS. It includes a system audit, which is a periodic assessment to ensure SMS as a whole complies with the regulation, other standards, DWP processes, and practices. And the very last one is the ACT, which is included. In this phase is basically, it determines if the changes are needed to improve the process based on the information that we learned in the check process. Key element in this phase is change management. Earlier, we talked about management of change, which is deals with the technical side of the change. Change management deals with the people side of the change. So obviously, it includes education, training, and communication. Next slide, please. So this shows that this achievement operational or safety excellence it's a journey. To get from a reactive compliance phase where people still believe that accidents happen, it's part of the job, it's the nature of the work, and view safety as following the rules and heavily relying on lagging indicators to evaluate safety, and to reach an interdependent level where teams take ownership of and responsibility for safety culture and believe that zero injury is really reachable and attainable. It requires commitment at every level. The two most important elements to achieve that goal is management commitment and employee participation. Next slide, please. This one is, I just wanted to take a second and recognize a significant accomplishment from our corporate health and safety team. In 2020, the corporate safety received 2 technology transfer awards on application of EPRI-related research, incorporating ergonomics into training programs for our new engineers, incorporating safety by design approach to controlling risk to workers as early as possible. Also, corporate safety was recognized for incorporation of heat stress management resources into our annual safety training programs for field workers. I just wanted to recognize their accomplishment. I want to recognize the team. The team was Jack Arushian, Ryan Asunuma, Chris Cadena, Dean Elliott, Mark Hendon, Anthony Lepicorn, Don Louie, Delia Pont, Leonard Wong. I just wanted to recognize their commitment and hard work and dedication, well-deserved awards. So with that, this concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Are there questions from any member of the board at this time? Then Nazir, I have a couple. The last time you presented to the board, you indicated that, thanks for the lights, you indicated that we were operating more in a compliance mode and on the journey toward a safety management system. I'm curious as to where we are at this juncture. And also, I would like to get some better understanding of our timeline toward progress to proactively managing our safety measures or our safety activities.
Thank you. Since the last report to the board, we did develop our initial implementation plan. This is our initial plan that identifies the framework, what this safety management system is going to look like if it's implemented in water and power, what it requires for it to be operational, and what are the steps needed with specific timelines for each step to be completed. That as part of this safety management system, it's built in a review process. So every process every part of safety management system will be reviewed to make sure it's consistent with the department goals, objectives, strategies. So right now the plan is being reviewed by executive management. So once we have their approval or recommendations, then we'll move forward. That's our goal.
So I'm going to ask, and we'll make sure that you're back on our agenda this fall. And I will be interested in seeing a actual plan and a timeline associated with that plan. In addition, I'd like to see some of our own safety data disaggregated a little differently and in much more granularity. Susana asked about, I'm curious about what we track and what our actual numbers are as opposed to, percentages per, we can look at it as percentages per 100, but I'm also curious as to the number of significant incidences we have. And what that trend line looks like, the number of, what you would classify as not significant or those things that result in informal review. I'd like to know the criteria that determines the difference between that which triggers a formal versus informal review and who makes that decision. I'm also curious as to how we track near misses and what we do about them. But most importantly, I am anxious to see the department embrace as rigorous a safety management program as possible. I, know that every member of our department and certainly every senior manager and each and every member of this board is deeply concerned about and committed to employees being provided with the best training, the best equipment, and the best processes and procedures to ensure the safe completion of their work. I am struck by not only the level of technical skill that it takes to perform, especially in our field jobs, but also the level of risk that is associated with any number of those jobs. So plan to be back before the board in October. And Marty, I assume that this will be very, very high on your list of things to bring to fruition. Compliance is the minimum that we want to be engaged in at this department. And I know that there is a great deal of energy put forward to protect employees. I'd just like to see it come together in a way that has us in one single place with one single operational plan that we can track with some level of with diligence our safety, our employees' safety, and within safety operations within the department. So, does anyone have any other comment around this matter? I see Andy.
Yeah, if I could add, I wanted to wait to see if any of the other commissioners, but you know, I'm excited about this. I'm a little bit sad that a lot of this is going to happen after I'm gone, but you know, this has been long overdue in this company, and I can tell you from experience, having managed a couple fatalities in this company, that I don't believe, I would like it to be that not one person here can learn from what I feel, right? The fact that, you know, there's not a day goes by that I don't think that if I'd have done something different, you know, the employees I've lost, the coworkers and friends I've lost would still be here. And I think it's important that, you know, learn from my regret that I live with that feeling every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. This is the most critical thing we can do for safety, for our coworkers, for our families. And I think it's really important. The fact that this is happening, and I know, you know, I would love it to be done tomorrow, but I think it's more important that we do it right than quickly, because it will set us back even farther if we don't. And I'm confident that Nazir's team, you know, they have spent a lot of time, you know, with the other peer utilities that have these kind of programs, and learning from them so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But again, this is something that's long overdue, and I'm just grateful that you know, we're heading down this track. Better late than never. But I'm grateful for the board's support, and I know Marty supports this. And you know, I think, you know, I've worked around these hazards for almost 40 years, but you know, we as system heads and managers, we can't be up on the day-to-day changes in the rules, the laws. Right, and that's why we're fortunate to have Nazir's team that lives that every day, that can keep us up and tell us what we need to do. And we need to support that office. I believe it needs to grow. I think I've mentioned that I think, you know, occupational health and workers' comp should be under the Office of Safety. I think they should all be working together. That's just my view. But again, I'm grateful for this board's support of this, and really, I'm grateful for the fact that this board supports us as employees and managers and workers to the level that you guys do. We are very fortunate. And again, it's one of the many things that we're doing that I'm sad we didn't start 10 years ago. And, you know, I think a lot of that's my responsibility for not pushing it 10 years ago. But I'm grateful that we're headed in this direction now. So
I just also want to thank you, Andy, for your commitment and your you're feeling responsible for the safety of our employees, and also for Nazir for this presentation. I too look forward to the October report. We are very supportive of, and safety is a priority for the department, because I still remember DWP's safety slogan, and I don't know if it's still the same. I've memorized it. It's like, no job is so important or service so urgent that we cannot take time to perform our work safely. So that slogan resonates with me as a former employee, and I know that we need to really ensure the safety and health of our employees, and as one of our, you know, top assets as well. Thank you so much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Anything else on this topic? then appreciate it. Look forward to seeing where we are in a few months and to working with you to make sure that we are doing the very best we can for the people that show up to work here every day. Next, we will have a presentation on our master plan. You're going to make me create a new board rule on just presentations, given the length of this one, Sammy.
Okay.
A lot of slides, buddy.
Well, I understand. I'm the person between everyone's lunch break and going forward here, so I'll make it fast.
No. Now that you say that, what we're going to do is we have this, and then we have one other presentation before going before considering a motion and going into a closed session. So why don't we just take say it's 11:30? Why don't we take a 15-minute break? We'll be back at 11:45. Does that work for folks?
Cynthia, I don't know if you saw my text.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I will
Did not.
Okay. So I need a full half hour. So just I will come back at noon.
Oh, okay. Not a problem. Then why don't we do this? We will. I don't think anyone will be feelings will be hurt if we take a 30-minute break. So there are only 4 of us today. So why don't we do that? We'll take a 30-minute break. We will reconvene at noon. Thank you, Commissioner Neiman Brady, and Sammy. We will be all set for you. You know that I don't want to miss a word. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. We are in recess.
Please remain silent.
WebEx Assistant is enabled to save audio highlights.
We're recording. I will now take roll. Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
And Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, not yet. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. And our next presentation is on the JFB Reconsolidation Master Plan. And I just want to preface this presentation by acknowledging that for fully the first year plus that I was on this board, I was probably obsessed with the progress and plan around restacking JFB. So I am extremely pleased to see that we are poised to make significant progress. I also want to note that our building, designed by A.C. Martin and Associates and completed in 1965, is described on the LA Conservancy website as a modern temple dedicated to the worship of water and water by day, and a paean to the city's thirst for power by night. Also of note, an architectural historian, Renard Bannon, described the LADWP headquarters as, quote, the only public building in the whole city that genuinely graces the scene and lifts the spirit, and sits in firm control of the whole basis of human existence in Los Angeles. I make those notations by way of defending my obsession with this precious jewel of a building that we are so incredibly lucky to occupy, and commitment to its both preservation but also its restoration to the 20th century modern glory that it represented in 1965, and that we have a duty to protect and preserve moving forward, not only on behalf of our employees, but on behalf of the citizens of this great city who built it. So with that introduction, Sammy, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President McCLAIN-HILL, Vice President Reyes, and Commissioner LEHRER, and General Manager, Chief Engineer, Marty Adams. I'd like to introduce myself as Sammy Wong, Senior Architect with Facility Services, Planning and Design. I've been fortunate to be here for 12 years to kind of see this project evolve to this point, and I'd like to share with you the JFB Reconsolidation Master Plan. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. So before I start discussing the JFB Reconsolidation Master Plan, I need to talk about the progress of Pacific Stock Exchange, because without the Pacific Stock Exchange, we cannot clear enough space here to actually start the master plan. Okay, so Pacific Stock Exchange is down the street, right across from Boylston, and these are progress construction photos of the progress inside on the TI work. And what's you're seeing here is a push to really finish up all the ceiling work, get the ceiling tile in, and close up the interiors so that we can start installing furniture. So this was the landing, and it's a milestone of what we did a week ago, where we delivered and start installing the cubicle frames. So that's an important landmark, because schedule-wise, we're looking to finish this at the end of August, so we can start the move over. There's 3 floors at the Pacific Stock Exchange. The 11th floor here is the lowest level of occupied space. Down below the 11th floor is a series of parking garage levels. And what you're seeing here is in the orange, the customer contact center that's going to move over from JFB 6th floor. So this is the entire contact center, and then in the green area is what we know as the account services unit in our lobby. Okay. On the 12th floor, we're relocating the entire, I should say most of the IT floor on the 2nd level. The data center obviously no longer is on the 2nd floor. It's moved over to core site about a year ago. And the only remaining piece of the 2nd floor that will remain is the network operations center and the voice operation command center, along with a water operation server room in the corner of the 2nd floor. But this represents the majority of IT also relocating to the Pacific Stock Exchange. On the penthouse level of the stock exchange, the uppermost floor, it's the relocation of the 7th and the 10th floor of CSD. So on that level of the penthouse, you have the revenue management group, service support, admin support services, and the market efficiency group off of the 10th floor. So this represents a majority of CSD moving over. CSD exec will remain in JFB, along with the key premier accounts group. So that brings us to the master plan. So what you see here is a diagram of JFB in 15 floors, right? From the lobby all the way to the 15th floor. Colored in are the groups that are going to relocate to the Pacific Stock Exchange. So if I could blow this up a little bit more, you can see that in the lobby area here, this is the account service unit that I mentioned that's going on the 11th. This is the IT group. And then you have the call center off of 6, and then services off of 7 that are also relocating. And then the pieces of 10 on the on this floor represents pieces of the customer service division. Okay, a negative reading of that diagram that I showed you shows this restack of what's left or remaining. So as you can see, the lobby would be vacated, the 2nd floor would be vacated, 6, 7 pieces of the 10. Diagrammatically, red represents power system, blue represents the water system, and then the other colors represent various joint groups. Like the 4th, for instance, is the FSO group, 5th floor is the HR group, and so on and so forth. So, you know, if you squint your eye here, pretty much it's just a mix of different groups that are just shuffled, if you will, around the entire JFB. The master plan looks to consolidate power and water groups first. So you have power groups consolidated on 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 in the red here. Then you have the water groups consolidating on 12, 13, 14, and pieces of them are on the 2nd floor. The rest represents the joint groups. I should mention that with the Pacific Stock Exchange, going back to this diagram, we have 1,000 people moving over. Okay, the water system group here shows a section of what's remaining for water system. So as you've seen in the last diagram, they would occupy 12, 13, 14, and pieces of the 2nd floor. And that's what this shows. So in terms of their growth, Currently, they have about 2 3/4 floor. They'll gain 3/4 of a floor. In its totality, there's about 3.5 floors for the water system, which represents 30% growth and approximately a little under 200 employees. Power system will be consolidated in one elevator bank, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The growth factor here is 56%, which represents a gain of 1 3/4 of a floor for a total of 5 floors. And in terms of employee increase, that's about 400. For the joint system, through the various groups, there's a gain of approximately 100 employees through right. So what you're seeing here, going back to this diagram, is the representation of 1,000 people moving out of the building. And then in these various colored areas is the joint groups. And then the growth factor there is about 10% or 100 employees of growth. I'd like to mention the project schedule here a little bit. So what you're seeing here is a simple bar diagram of what's happened with the Pacific Stock Exchange, where we started the process a year ago, back in April, and it
Forgive
was.
me for interrupting. I just wanted to make it known that I've returned. Commissioner Neiman Brady is back.
Okay. Okay. So in the Pacific Stock Exchange, it took 2.5 months of design work, and this construction started back in June. So it's a 14-month construction, which will end in August. At that point, once the building is turned over to us, we're going to have about a month to connect our servers and connect our security system, as well as some ergonomic furniture adjustments of bringing over worker comp employees. And then the slated move over to PSC will start beginning in October. The first group to move out will be ITS, and then that is about half of a month duration. Then we'll continue with the CSD group and then finish the completion of the relocation by the end of the year. That will allow us to start the reconsolidation at the beginning of January. And what we've identified here in the bar graph here is a goal of originally what we had planned was 2 floors, but we're going to target renovating 4 floors a year, and this will carry us to 2025. I'd like to talk about the project scope. It's more than just a move, if you will, over to the Pacific Stock Exchange, and it's more than just furniture office remodel. I like to take a little bit of time on this slide here. This is a checklist of all the items that we're going to be addressing here. One is the LED lighting, and I need to thank Nancy Sutley and David Jaco's group and Efficiency Solutions with helping us retrofit all of the existing fluorescent lights to an LED light fixture. And we've developed this LED light fixture to mimic what was a flat panel look back when this was installed in 1965. So this is if you think about it, really like a TV monitor, if you will. And it'll have a occupancy sensor in this little area here on each fixture, as well as controls that will allow it to gradate in its lighting dimming capability from the edge of the window to the center of the core. So if you think about it, you need less light at the window area than you do at the core area. So we can adjust that and have energy efficiency through that lighting system. And the estimate is that it's a 3.7-year return on investment when we do that. The other things we're going to address is when we open up the ceiling is repair what's necessary within the air conditioning. Obviously, we'll have to address fire sprinkler relocation. We'll take the opportunity to change out the ceiling tiles. We also need to address the restroom in the cores because they're no longer ADA compliant, nor do they have the correct fixture counts. We're going to also have a core break room. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the open space plan. So that's the entire project scope. In the midst of this, we're also addressing hazardous abatement on the floor and the ceiling as well. This is a palette of what is anticipated for the restroom. Again, there's not enough fixture counts in the current code for the women's. So we're going to have to add a couple of water closets and then subtract a couple of water closets for the men to bring it up to current code and then address ADA. So the palette you're seeing here is something I started with the elevators some time ago. So everybody's seen the elevator as they ride up the building. So this will match in its concept what you're seeing in terms of the color palette and texture palette as you see in the elevators. And then there's an idea to modernize the look of it as well. This is a diagram of the HVAC of the light fixture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the light fixture and also the windows because it all works together with the open space concept of what we're trying to achieve overall here. So I think the last time I presented this, Vice President Reyes asked me about how does the reduction of heat load impact the HVAC lighting system. So quickly as a diagram, the way this works is on every fixture in the main area, you have the supply in the red here blowing on the sides, the long sides of the fixture. And then on the short ends, you have the return, which is represented as blue. So the way this works is the air is returned within, and it sweeps across the light fixture within the attic space, and it returns back into the induction box and pushes it back over to the light. So this is a heat recovery system that was historic in its original concept in 1965, where A.C. Martin developed. And it is a distinguished element within the historic document. This works in conjunction in addition to the to the perimeter as well. Now, in terms of a calculation, what we're seeing is that when we change out all of the light fixtures to LED, there's a reduction of 55,000 BTUs per hour. Now that sounds like a big number, but by comparison, or if you have to equate that to a person, like a live body employee will generate 400 BTUs. So the bottom line is that it doesn't seem like it's going to be a big impact to the air conditioning. The other things about the open space plan are the views that we all know about around the building. To the south we have downtown LA. To the north we have the San Gabriel Mountains. To the east of the building you have the Hollywood Hills, and obviously to the west is the Hollywood Hills, and then to the east is City Hall. Currently, if you look at a diagram of a typical floor, and this is the 8th floor, highlighted in this dark blue area is a ring, right? So in this ring, what we've done over time is moved our manager offices, and I'm guilty of this, to the edge of the window here to kind of take up the views away from our employees. So and then in the rest of here, we know that this is the open space plan. The green is coded as the common areas. So this is our typical idea, right? That we have currently. We have offices pushed up against the windows. Inside the offices, we have this condition with boxes and then stuff that is just kind of pushed and stored up against the perimeter. Diagrammatically, if you look at this, this is the second part of the HVAC system. This glass area and this perimeter, this represents thermal transmission from the outside, whether it be hot or cold. There's an air curtain system that pushes air up, and there's a return up in the soffit here in this highlighted area in the yellow. Down below, as you can see here, is your supply. And then this happens on every floor as you go up. So this is a couple of things. One is it creates a curtain that shields the thermal transmission, and the other one, it actually brings a return from the main space. So if the building is operating correctly, we shouldn't have stagnation. There should be proper airflow. There should be even temperature control. And obviously there's energy efficiency if it was properly working as a design. So, you know, with the offices here at the perimeter, if we know that's the problem, so what's the solution? It's this diagram here. So in this diagram, in the open space plan, what we're trying to achieve here is the main body of this will remain the open area. Green is the common conference room. Yellow is the common community areas. And then not to take all the offices away from the upper manager level, we will have offices on the north and south ends, on the short ends of this, with the first level supervisors moved to the core. So in 3 dimensions, what that looks like is this. And what you're seeing, if I could blow this up, okay, so what you're seeing again is the upper level managers will be on the north-south ends, first level supervisors in the core area. And then you have the open space plan here. Coming off the elevator, the idea is that you will see on every floor City Hall. There's a reconnection back to City Hall, and that's important because these are 2 buildings that sit at opposite ends, and if you ever notice, the front doors align perfectly with each other, with the grand park in between as a table setting. So this is a diagram of what that means in terms of the airflow, and also you would know that this would be open again to all the views surrounding it. This drawing right here is a floor of a high density. So these 2 slides that I'm going to show you actually is something that was important to me to make sure that this concept would work. So number-wise, this represents 280 workstations and offices, which I consider a heavy cubicle model. And this is what we've actually taken off of the 13th floor. So we took the program on 13th floor and we modeled it in a high density floor here. In a typical floor, what we also did was we took the number, which is 230, and this represents a more medium density floor in the office building. And we could equate this to maybe the 8th floor right now. It also works in the concept of having 3 suites, if you will. If you didn't actually occupy the entire floor, you can see the light gray, dark gray, and the dark blue as 3 suites. Again, the open space concept works in the middle here. You have a yellow area which brings you into the main space off of the elevators, as well as a common area of collaborative space. You have a central break core room here. And the central break core room is important because I don't know if you noticed, over time, people have used cubicles. So that this does a couple of things. One is it frees up the cubicle spaces for employees, as well as centralizes and the maintenance and custodial operations of each area. So if we apply the current standard that we have, typical associate gets a 65-inch cube. This is a recent remodel I did on the 12th floor, and this is what you get, right? So the 65-inch concept is applied here, and this is our version of the open space plan as we know it, right? So it's not that open if you think about it, and in some ways it feels inhumane. The idea going forward is to actually break down that cubicle space and to lower some of the panels, as you see in this photograph. And we've had success on this over at Fig Plaza. We use a 50-inch high cubicle instead of 65-inch panel. And that does a couple of things. It allows you to have privacy when you sit down, and it allows you to be part of a community when you stand up. And then to address the COVID pandemic issues, we're going to raise the lower panels up to 65 inches with glass. This is a photograph of a.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry, just
sure.
about that. I understand the protocol of having the glass there, but that just seems like a practical problem. Just the breaking and I don't know. That seems like a hazard. Whereas these walls are effectively padded. So I'm just thinking from a safety perspective.
Okay. Well, we've actually done this with plexiglass over the last year, and I don't know if there's been any reported incidents.
Okay, so you're using plexi. You had said glass. So
no, I'm sorry. This is glass. This will be tempered glass.
Okay.
And we do have plexi currently, and I don't know of any reported incidents of injury with the plexi. That's not to say we couldn't change this idea to plexi.
I have a question. To what degree is sort of your analysis of a lot of information moving forward about, people not necessarily, there might be some people that don't come back full time, or that there would be shared workspaces. So you don't have your own space. You come in and you have a shared work. Any of that sort of?
Yeah, I can address that maybe towards the end of the presentation. So let me quickly go through this, and then we can talk about.
Can you just finish the point that I made? Can you just keep that in mind, because I think that.
Yeah, I was going to say at a minimum, what I'm hearing is you need to explore any safety concerns related to the material, glass versus plexiglass, and make sure that that's incorporated into that thinking moving forward.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so this is what Google does, right? And I only bring this up.
You missed a slide. Back up. What's this? The slide before? Yes.
Okay, this slide is the glass offices for the managers. So the concept is to open up the space for the supervisors and managers as well, and have them engage more with the employees. Now, that's not to say we couldn't frost this at a certain level, but if you look at the overall plan here, the idea was to have this openness and engagement with the supervisors and workers.
Okay.
As well as at this edge.
And so that would mean then the managers get no privacy when they sit down.
again, I could frost this edge. And we do this all the time. We can apply film at the lower edge of this to create a half high or 50 or 60-inch high area.
Okay. And when you get to the point, but before you conclude, can you also talk about where lactation rooms are?
Yes.
Because if they're not able to do it in their offices, want to make sure we know that they're well accommodated for.
All right. So this is a blow up of what we're talking about here. So in this area, what we could do is make this solid with frost, or we can actually use metal half glass as well, if that's an issue. We also have areas like this where we can convert into lactation rooms. This is shown as a file room. And the beauty of this building in its modular state is you can actually create rooms very easily, right? So these wall panels snap into the grid system, and we can make this solid. We can make this a quiet room. We can make this many things. So there's flexibility built within the design of the system itself. This is shown as an open conference room. Again, I mean, there's just tons of different possibilities of what we could do. This could be a training room going forward, so on and so forth.
And I know that this is these are just sort of rough or conceptual drawings, but I too was having the same thought that Commissioner NEEMAN Brady was having around lactation rooms. I've heard a lot about that among our employees, and so as you are continuing to evolve the plans for floors, that is something that you want to keep very much in mind.
Okay.
I just want to interject on that. I think for the lactation rooms, human resources will also have a role in that as well. So.
All right, sir, you were on your Google slide.
Right. So on the Google side, this is what is one of the trends that Google does, and I only show it because a couple of reasons. One is I like to stay current with the outside community and what the working environment is for the next generation. So you can see what happens here is there's a lot of collaborative spaces. People work together as teams. They don't necessarily have a desktop. They have laptops. There's like whiteboards that they just kind of work around and talk together, and it's a little bit different environment than what we know, right? As I showed in the cubicle photograph. How that applies to us going forward. I'm going to show you a couple of renderings here. So at the ends of these, again, the idea is this openness and collaboration of space. This is shown as a conference room, but it could easily, because of this modular design built into the building, turn into a collaborative space like this. So this is a response to one of the questions about how are we addressing the workplace with people coming back to work. So, obviously, I think it's a mistake to kind of just do the same thing over again, is what my point is. And there's opportunities here where we can look at making the space flexible, whether it be a conference room, a gathering space. And this obviously has to be engaged with the technology of Wi-Fi. Maybe people can link their laptop into this area right here and have discussions. This is a rendering as you get off the elevator that looks back towards City Hall. Now this is a little bit ambitious because I'm cutting out a floor here and opening two floors together. So this probably is not going to happen, but it's an idea that I had to show. Okay, so if I can show you the next renderings here, these are just going to drive the point home of the open space concept. So again, this is 65-inch panels that we know as we walk around. If we apply the current standards to the open space concept, this is what we're getting, right? So what you're seeing here is going to be before and after shots. So this is what you're seeing before 65-inch, and this is what you're getting with a breakdown in the panels with the glass, or I should say plexi as we look into it. So again, you can see that there's a tremendous amount of difference. As you sit down here, you can have the privacy. If you stand up, you're part of the community. All right. This is another view from the other end. And again, that's the idea of opening up the space. And with that, I'll end with this slide and open the time for questions and comments.
Nicole, you missed my opening of this presentation with my lavish praise and recognition of the building's historic landmark standing and overall positioning in the modern architecture, 21st century modern art or 20th century modern architecture of the city of Los Angeles. I'm sorry I'm going first, but I have been and continue to be very much interested in how we both evolve our space. It is almost criminal to be in JFB and then to go to LaCretz, and at LaCretz to see half the building reflect a more modern approach to work, and the other half reflect sort of DWP's throwback approach to work and space. We think and speak a lot about environment here, often in reference to external environment. However, I've heard over my time on this board that our internal environment has implications for our competitiveness in the marketplace. And I can see how that would be true given our interest in recruiting top talent, which then has the option to go anywhere. And being confronted with what we currently have in terms of working conditions for many of our disciplines, especially in this building where they're overcrowded and stacked and at a minimum need to be spread out. This is a critical project. I think these concepts serve not only to reflect the way that work will be and workspaces will be understood in the future, but it also connects very directly to the building's history, its overall design intent, and its past. And as I indicated at the top of the presentation, I do believe that we have a significant obligation to protect, to preserve, to promote this, what was a landmark design building in 1965, and to pay as much attention to it as we do to all of the other things that we spend time focused on at the department. Are there other commission comments with respect to at least this aspect of the presentation?
I have a few comments. I just want to thank you, Sammy. I really love the concept. I like the approach of us being out there and looking at what would attract our future employees as well, and using our resources right now to really reimagine our workplaces. I'm coming from a sustainability angle. I'm just thinking, what principles are you applying to ensure that the restacking follows the department's sustainability goals? I'm specifically curious about the JFB's pathway to, say, zero carbon, right? How do we ensure JFB remains an all-electric building? Given all the changes that we're going to be taking, I'm still just curious about our pathway, because that is something that we can tout. I know our building is like a gold LEED certified building, and the first in California to have that accreditation. And I also had the chance to visit the aeroponic garden at the JFB, which can be replicable in other facilities. So from a sustainability angle, can you just expand more if we're meeting, the department's sustainability and the mayor's sustainability goals?
Yeah, so for my part on this, I mean, what we're trying to achieve here is, the couple of lead principles of the open space, capturing natural light coming into the building, relying less on artificial lighting, also the idea of the views being captured in the workplace, the efficiency of what I just explained to you on the LED lighting is going to be a tremendous savings to actually get us to a 15% compliance with the EV-WEB right now. When it comes to the next step of the solar, I don't want to overstep my bounds. That's something the Efficiency Solutions Group with Maria SUSANA and David Jaco is exploring under Nancy Sutley's group on achieving a net zero building. There is no idea of a gas boiler or anything like that. We're going to maybe possibly use an electric boiler going forward to kind of maintain the fact that this will be an electrified building. But I want to defer to that discussion of the net zero building to more of Nancy Sutley's group.
Okay.
And we'll certainly have, as a part of a future update, that as an area of focus as well. It is apparent, however, that we will not lose anything in the plans that are being put forward, and in fact will, by increasing or optimizing the building design, which was one that leveraged nature and produced efficiency as a matter of design, that we will actually be improving upon what we have now. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Lehr, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I think some, really interesting to hear so much about how the systems in the building were so advanced, and, it was advanced in so many ways. And that you're opening up views, sort of so one has a real understanding of its place in the city. I really think that one should explore the open plan in some areas, because I think the open plan meaning sort of this more sort of flexible space strategy that is being used throughout big corporations. I just would say that we're going to stay behind if we don't. I'm assuming that there's certain jobs where, in certain, when you have a certain set of responsibilities, you might not be able to do that. But I think that there's quite a bit, yes. So where does SOM come into this, or this is just an image for SOM?
No, we actually had them create these renderings under our direction.
Okay.
Because we paid for the modeling on this.
Yes. Okay.
But the concept actually came from our own design group under my
Okay,
staff.
good. So I'm just saying, I don't know how many of these spaces you have, and I will, just because I'm dealing with it and in my space, and at some point is like people want standing spaces too, meaning high tables. So I don't know if the way to look at that is to look at a few, which sort of which employees with certain sort of would be most likely to want to have that flexibility? And I don't mean even flexibility in schedule. I mean also just the flexibility of one day being in one corner and the other being in another, or any number of, depending on who they're going to be working with for a week or two, which floor they're going to be on. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing was, did creating operable windows was that an impossibility or possibility?
Well, yeah, we'd have to explore that. The windows themselves are deemed to be a distinguished feature of the building.
Yeah.
That's historic.
Okay.
So, we even looked at having dual pane glass at one point, but it became a little bit cumbersome with the historic preservation of the building. So we
And so the other thing is how there isn't any outdoor space like for and I just curious if you explored the roof becoming potentially having a deck or view, or maybe I just have never been there and there or one exists.
We have a huge deck at the bottom of the building. I was going to ask about the water feature.
Yeah.
As a part of this.
Yes.
As a part of this conversation, I've been deeply missing the water feature as I walk into the building, and wondered, Sammy, if your shop over there in facilities could give us an update as to when that will be operable again.
Yeah, so we're looking at actually going out to bid next month, and then with the bid and award process, if we can start that end of the year, that's our goal of construction.
Wow, it's been down a long time.
It has.
So I'm sorry to hear that we're looking at so much time that will continue to elapse before that feature is up and going. In addition to that, I noticed that when other buildings in the city go purple or blue or rainbow or whatever the signal is, I remember distinctly when the city went gold for Jonathan Gold's death, that JWP often is not a part of that display. Is there a reason for that? And is that something that can also be addressed?
Well, we're addressing that going forward. So within the fountain, we have LED light fixtures that will light the fountain itself, and it's going to have a capability of changing colors. Currently, we have LEDs embedded into the handrail, which also changes colors. And then again, David Jaco's group is helping or assisting us with the perimeter edge lighting here on every eyebrow. Will actually be retrofitted with LED fixtures. I mean, currently in the 1965 design, there is fluorescent lighting that will just light the building in fluorescent color, but we're looking at actually changing that to LED with a controller. So we will have that ability to change colors on it.
Nice.
And then you indicated that that the restack and redesign and the various project scope that you've outlined will be done 4 floors at a time beginning next year. Is that the schedule that we're on?
Yes, that's the goal.
Then it sounds like, just based on commission comments, that there's a great deal of support for moving toward a much more aligned, modern approach to the building restack redesign. I think we with that, you've shown us conceptually what that will look like. I'll be eager to see in the next few months something a little more refined as we move forward, since if you're actually doing work, we'll have to get more refined. And in addition, just because you talked about the historic conditions or the creep over time that has allowed the building to morph into how it currently presents, I'll also be interested in looking at some guidelines around that will help standardize things like purchases of office furniture and fixtures and things of that nature, so that we don't over time replicate the kind of hodgepodge nature of what's occurring now. And then also, as we begin to bring employees back into the building, I recall from our initial conversations around this that the last people to know what was happening at their workplace were the folks that work here. So I will also be interested in some form of communication around schedule and intention to give people something to look forward to, and to allow our workforce more broadly to appreciate both why they're being disrupted, when they're going to be disrupted, and what the end game will look like. So I look forward to working with you on that as we move forward. Are there any additional questions or comments?
I just have one. I'm just curious, President McCLAIN-HILL and Sammy, is there also a plan to remodel the cafeteria? Because that's like a amenity.
Don't get me going on the cafeteria and the auditorium.
So if I work there, I'm like, I want to know, do I have a modern cafeteria too? And I don't know how that how that affects schedule, if it's spaced in afterwards. Do you know?
Well, currently the schedule doesn't include that, but it's not that we couldn't address it going forward. I mean, we do have some conceptual designs on it. And it's also a matter of engaging the right vendor that will operate it.
Yeah, I think there are two pieces. Thank you for that, Susana. The cafeteria and that amazing auditorium space, which is just, I mean, it's almost criminal. Again, this building was built with public dollars, and not a long time ago. And we've restored all of City Hall. This building was built in 1965, and to have entire areas almost not fit for, and certainly not up to standards with respect to the uses that could be made of them, both leveraging internal uses and also public serving uses, is really something that we, as stewards of this public investment, we need to be thinking about and putting attention on. So certainly you've got to refine the things that you currently have scheduled, but it would be helpful, useful, and I think much appreciated if you had at least preliminary concepts and you can pay some time and attention to those other significant spaces in the building in the context of coming back to the board in a few months. All right, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Adams, any comment?
If I can unmute myself, yes, thank you. Thank you, Sammy, for the presentation. As you can see, this is it's a lot to undertake. It's an ambitious plan. We really appreciate the fact that the board is interested in this because, as has been pointed out, this is long overdue. And I actually found an article. We were looking for something in an old contact and found an article that envisioned that this building would be full by 1990 or early 90s. And that was what led up to the construction of the Anthony Office Building in the Valley. We have crammed substantially more people in this building than it was ever intended to hold, but by properly remodeling it and looking at the concepts that Sammy's laid out, and also addressing such things as there's a room for hoteling of spaces and a chance for looking at how people work and when they come to work. That offers us a way out. What you see when you walk around the building now is way more people here than it was ever intended to hold. So we aim to correct that and do it in a good way to bring back the true intent of this building and it's bring it back to its former glory. And I agree about the cafeteria. It's something we're looking at, and And we definitely need to address that and the auditorium. And I can't wait to clear out the people who have to work on the lobby level through the lobby as well and make it usable public space. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. This is an exciting project. We have our final presentation of the day on the Tom LaBonge Headworks Water Complex. Who is presenting that update?
I will start us off and introduce our presenter. So in the last two board meetings, Headworks has been mentioned, or two over the last couple months has been mentioned, most notably last month where we renamed the Headworks site, the Headworks Water Complex, the Tom LaBonge Headworks Water Complex. Today is a presentation of what's going on there, because the commission asked a couple meetings ago, what's going on at Headworks? You can see it from the freeway, and some people have heard some things, exciting things that are happening in the future. So we're just going to spend a few moments here telling you what's going on and what's going to happen. And we are going to talk about the different programmatic elements that are happening and will happen, and then really a signature project that's part of the Headworks Reservoir project that's currently under construction. So I would like to introduce Jessica Henson from the landscape architecture firm Olin, who will be giving our presentation. Jessica?
Great, thank you, Rich, and good morning, commissioners. It's great to be able to present to you today. Very much thank you for your time. Next slide. The Headworks is a 42-acre site along the LA River north of Griffith Park, adjacent to Forest Lawn Drive. And for the past decade, LADWP has been constructing two potable reservoirs that total about 110 million gallons of storage on the site as the replacement for the Silver Lake Reservoir. In this aerial, you can see on the eastern side of the site those two reservoirs that are now constructed. Next slide. In this slide, you can see the future site plan, which shows the elements we're going to discuss in today's update. On the far west side of the site, you can see the proposed water quality laboratory. Adjacent to that is a proposed direct potable reuse demonstration plant. And in the center of the site, the restoration gardens that are centered around the completed West Reservoir. Next slide. If you've driven or visited the site, driven by or visited recently, you have seen the completed reservoirs, the East Reservoir shown in the right side of this image and the West Reservoir in the center. You can see the large earthworks going in around the West Reservoir in this image from about a month ago. And the reservoir, the East Reservoir is operational, and West will be very shortly. Next slide. In the future, the Headworks Water Complex projects and restoration will bring together water infrastructure with ecological restoration and opportunities for education and recreation while encouraging stewardship of our natural resources. Next slide. As a key site along the Los Angeles River, the Headworks actually plays a very important role in the city of Los Angeles's overall goals for revitalizing the LA River as well, creating native habitat and also connecting the bike trail through the valley, which you can see in the image here on the left. Next slide. The site is actually also at a very critical moment in terms of our habitats. So what you can see here is the native upland habitats of the Santa Monica Mountains. And what we want to do is to be able to connect from these ecosystems. And what you'll see on the next slide is the riparian habitat communities along the river. And so being able to celebrate and honor these native plant communities as we restore the site and knit it back together with the surroundings. Next slide. Many of you might be familiar. The Headworks has long been important for the Los Angeles water supply. Historically, as you can see in the left here, the site was part of the river's alluvial floodplain with meander loops that would actually flow through the site and tunnels underground that would bring water supply to the city. In the mid-20th century, as you can see in the center, the site was a large spreading ground. And about a decade ago, as I mentioned, construction began on the next iteration of the life of the Headworks for water supply, water storage, and the upcoming water lab. Next slide. Here you can see in this diagram that the site is surrounded by several parks and open spaces. And so as was always part of the plan for the construction of the reservoirs, when that was complete, that this would be knitted back into this context through the restoration phase, which is now underway. Next slide. Looking more closely at the overall proposed site programming in this diagram, you can see the water quality lab in blue on the left, the direct potable reuse in the center, and then the main gardens and restoration parking, entry, and pavilion in the center. And the site will also connect about a mile of the LA River bikeway and trail along the northern edge of the site. So I'm going to talk through each of these elements, starting from the western side and the water quality lab. Next slide. In this rendering, you can see the conceptual design of the proposed water quality laboratory. The design is not complete, so this is a conceptual placeholder as we move further into that process. This two-story building is proposed to be approximately 100,000 square feet of laboratories, offices, and educational exhibit space. It's proposed to be state-of-the-art and provide opportunities also for the public to learn about water quality. And here you can see that rendering. On the next slide, you can see the next element along the site adjacent to the water quality lab is the proposed direct potable reuse demonstration plant. This is an element of Operation Next. And you can see this is a schematic conceptual rendering. It won't look exactly like this, but this is what the process looks like. As an emerging technology, DPR actually will require a significant amount of research. And it becomes a platform actually for consulting and working with the State Division of Drinking Water to demonstrate LADWP's ability to produce high quality water that is protective of public health. The first phase of this is a 1 million gallon per day demonstration facility to test the new technology, validating the ability to safely produce purified recycled water. Phase 2 in the future would then blend that purified recycled water with potable water through the reservoir complex and actually create a water supply.
Can I pause you? Can I pause you here? Rich, that water's coming from Tillman then?
This water here would be coming in the demonstration plant proposed to come from the LA Glendale wastewater plant. So, which is directly to the east, so it would go basically through Griffith Park and then right into the DPR. And then being DPR, then we would spill it right into these headworks reservoirs.
That seems, I'm sure that's most efficient.
Well, there's already a recycled line coming from the LAG plant that's serving both of the
irrigation
cemeteries there and then some other facilities to the west.
Okay. Okay, and how large can the DPR facility get here, assuming the demo gets is successful?
Right, it's just a proof of concept plant, and it would set for a 1 million gallon plant at this point. And beyond that, will be the dreamers and schemers of that time.
No, I get that, but could it accommodate more space here, or?
I don't know if we really looked into that. It obviously is limited by footprint. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great questions. So in addition to those infrastructure elements and the lab, the idea here is that this is a truly multi-benefit site with a public experience, ecological restoration, and water quality improvements as well. So really marrying those things and making sure everything works operationally and through the restoration is important. Next slide. As you know, and as actually was really apparent in the previous presentation and President McCLAIN-HILL made very clear, for well over a century, LADWP infrastructure has had a civic face that relates to our communities. And so continuing this tradition, the headworks restoration will allow the public to understand and experience the scale of the reservoirs of our public infrastructure as they visit this public amenity in the reservoir gardens. Next slide. As you can see in this early design sketch, the native landscape around the reservoirs will be restored, And we're actually revealing the western face of the West Reservoir, allowing visitors to see the scale of that. I mean, the scale of these reservoirs is literally the scale of like the pyramids, and these are the civic works of our time. And we really want to celebrate that history on this site, which has such a deep relationship to our water infrastructure. And as you get nearer to the reservoir, the geometry of the plants starts to take their cue from the geometry of the reservoir, organizing themselves. So still using water-wise, drought-tolerant native species, but using them in a unique and special way in this garden. Next slide. In this model photograph, you can see how that's been further developed in this idea being a little bit getting more refined. The reservoir gardens on top of the roof of the West Reservoir and parking in a river pavilion here, which I'll talk more about in a second. Next slide. So here is the overall site plan we are working on right now for the restoration. As you can see, heavily focused around the West Reservoir, the LA River Trail across the north, and entry from the south off of Forest Lawn to the parking. Next slide. As I mentioned, one of the critical components here is really to knit this site into the riparian plant communities of the LA River. This means working with the City of LA Rio overlay guidelines, as well as the Los Angeles River Landscape and Design Guideline requirements. We really want to utilize those plant palettes and make this a critical component in that connectivity. Next. In the future, when you arrive at the headworks from the LA River Trail, which you can see here, you'll move along this multi-use path for pedestrians and bikes. And there's also an equestrian path that will still allow equestrian users to move through the site into the larger path network of Griffith Park. We're using dark sky, wildlife friendly, highly efficient lighting. And of course, the site will also have a fence in case there's ever a need to fence it off or to close it to the public. Next slide. As you move closer, you get near the Headworks Pavilion here, which is a gateway into the site from the river trail. You can see the name of Headworks in the canopy. And on the next slide, you can get a sense of how the words and the trees beyond start to, the letters being cut into both sides here, announcing the Headworks, but also becoming an interesting interplay of light and shadow, which you can see in the next slide. As we have this canopied space, which could be for kids to have field trips in the future as they come and learn about water quality and have lunch here, etc., on this place. Next slide. As you get closer to the West Reservoir, you can see the west face here exposed, allowing people to really get a sense. If you haven't been out there yet, it's really incredible to stand next to this and the work that has been completed here. Next slide. As you move around to the north and the south of the West Reservoir, these large sloping walks, again, like, kind of like the scale of walking up a pyramid here, really being able to move up to the top and experience the reservoir gardens. Next slide. When you arrive at the roof of the reservoir gardens, you'll be able to move through a series of planted berms that highlight native and water-wise species. We have a lawn, very small lawn area for picnicking, and a series of groves for shade, paths allowing you to move through these gardens. The one thing I do want to note for the commission is there are 3 bridges illustrated here. Those are not part of the base construction. Those sculptural bridges are not part of the current work, and they would require future board action and outside funding for those sculptural pieces. Just want to make sure that's clear to everyone as we move to the next couple of slides. Next slide. Working extensively on climate considerations, particularly related to water use and stormwater management. I think the comments about the drought at the beginning of this meeting make it very clear why we need to be thinking in that regard as we move forward here. And next slide, we are using a series of gardens that highlight many Southern California natives as well as water-wise species. This is a great place where people can come and get ideas for their gardens as well, and what responsible water use could look like. And then these gardens are designed to have these pops of colors throughout the season. And what you'll see in the next slide is the way that different species are coming together is something we've spent a lot of time on. We want this to be a very maintainable garden. And so the intermixing of rows of meadows and shrubs and how that over time will shift and change and be maintained is one of the big efforts of the LADWP team and the consultant team's efforts. Next slide. Here you can see just one example of how those berms come together. This particular one is Ceanothus, which is California lilac, one of our drought-tolerant, lovely native species, and how different grasses coming together in these berms and allowing you to experience these very special artistic gardens that still highlight our native ecologies and also become great places for pollinator species, which of course we need more of those. Next slide. You can see here throughout the season, we're working to get those pop colors. It's kind of cool. You wouldn't have to go out to the Antelope Valley to see the poppies bloom, for example. You could come to the headworks and experience the gardens here. Next slide. In this model shot, you can see those colored berms. The center is a dry meadow. The lawn over here, the lawn has this great vista looking out towards the LA River and the greater San Fernando Valley beyond. And like I mentioned earlier, these 3 sculptural bridges, which are not part of the current project, but would require future action. In the next slide, you'll see an example of one of those being conceptualized somewhat like treehouse elements within those gardens. Again, that sculptural effort would be a separate thing from this project. And this last slide, next slide, you'll be able to see a potential future overall master plan for the site. And so while not part of the current work on the site, as projects come online and different footprint sizes are settled, there could be opportunities for a future restoration of a wetland in the center and also future gardens on the East Reservoir. Again, not part of the current work because this is a very long timeline at the headworks, but to give everyone a sense of the overall 42 acres, this image helps with that. And then lastly, the final piece here, just want to really thank everyone for your time today. The team is looking forward to the future of the Tom LaBonge Headworks Water Complex, which we think will be a great place for generations of Angelinos to learn about and appreciate our water infrastructure while being stewards of our natural resources. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jessica.
Terrific, thank you. Are there any additional comments or with respect to the presentation or questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, Mia LEHRER here. I think it's important that the RIO guidelines are being taken into consideration. I did notice that in slide 28, there are still olive trees on the site, which are definitely kind of something to reconsider. And otherwise, it would be actually a good idea to sort of engage with sort of your neighbors, which basically is sort of the Griffith Park, just so that there's some good communication. I think that there will be, I can't imagine there wouldn't be a lot of support, but they're a little sensitive to things that happen on their edges. So just would suggest that would be a good strategy. When it happens, then is not for me to suggest, but once it hits the press, which I think will happen quite soon, it would have been better to sort of communicate, and Marty might have experience with them on other projects to sort of explain what that could mean, because they're and I live there, but I'm not involved with them. So just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich, if I could speak for just a second to the olive trees. You're correct that the groves on the roof of the reservoir are currently fruitless olives. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So the RIO guidelines, just, and if you'll all pardon me for a 30-second explanation, require a 75% compliance with their plant communities that are native river communities or are water-wise species. And so currently the project that we're looking at is 96%. So we are actually very far exceeding the RIO guidelines, which is great. The reason why olives are specifically up here, and again, we can continue to discuss this in the future, but they have a non-aggressive root system. So as we worked with the Division of Safety of Dams, the allowance to have trees on top of the reservoir is something that's really of high interest to them. And so the great thing about olive trees is they're very long-lived and they're very drought tolerant. And they also, after they roots grow to a certain extent, they don't get aggressive beyond that. And so that was a species that DSOD felt comfortable allowing on the roof here that we also felt was in line with the drought tolerance. Anyway, that's just
Thank you. Thank you.
More later potentially.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation and your comments, Commissioner Lehr. Are there any other comments regarding this project? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really terrific to see the current status and look forward to this moving forward, continuing to move forward. We'll move then to filed items. We have a monthly report from Financial Services. Are there any comments or questions related to that? See none, hear none. Terrific. Then we have the informational reports, both an investment report and a future of work update. Are there comments or questions related to either of those reports? And I see that Commissioner Reyes' mic just turned on. So Commissioner Reyes.
Thank you. I just want to have a brief comment about the future of work. I know there's a lot of, focus on this report. I just want to reiterate that we should differentiate the return to work and telecommuting from the future of work initiative, which is from a more comprehensive view of what working for DWP will look like years from now. For the future of work, we need to, we're considering current and future priorities, including our infrastructure needs, even our climate response and adaptation needs to be considered. And but in terms of the return to work and telecommuting, I know that's should be a different initiative, and with a telecommuting policy being developed by city personnel, we should be looking at that, but not, we can connect that to the future of work later on, but it should not stop the work from it should not stop us from drafting our return to work plan and looking at a telecommuting policy if ever there is one that the city is going to be contemplating on, for us to explore that as well. And that's just my 2 cents worth of comment for the future of work, so that at least we'll be in the right direction. Thank you.
President McCLAIN-HILL, can you please unmute?
I'm sorry, thank you. I was simply saying thank you to Commissioner Reyes, and wanted to just assert that I agree with her comments 100%, and look forward to further updates regarding our return to work. One that also includes a survey of who's already back. We keep talking about return to work without full recognition of the significant number of folks who, some of whom never left their post in terms of working remotely, a number of whom are back. And so very interested in, from a division level perspective, what we're looking at in terms of the status quo and how that's going to evolve over the next few months. And know we've got some OSHA regs that should be adopted at some point very quickly or very soon that will have some implications for what the return looks like, what the phasing of that looks like. So again, thank you. And we we've done that takes us to item number 21. That was pulled special, and that was pulled by me. I appreciate the motion, and in particular, the sentiment regarding operating definitions for professional and personal service contracts. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, I wanted first to give you an opportunity to speak to your motion in terms of the reason that you are bringing it forward and what you seek to achieve, if that's something that you can do, just to make sure that I understand what this is laying the predicate for.
Absolutely. It's just, frankly, to provide some clarity around personal and professional services as we embark on, seeking out some support in further professionalizing the company and whether it's with consulting engagements or other professional support. I think you're on mute still.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess in speaking with Joe a little bit regarding the current definitions and the history of these provisions, particularly as they tie to the general manager's authority, it became clear that there is some ambiguity that would benefit from a great deal more clarity around what is intended and what falls into what bucket versus not. And to your point, as we look at whether levels are appropriately set, having clarity around what is or isn't a professional versus a personal service contract would make a great deal of sense. So can you tell me how this is, like who's undertaking this review, and is it intended that the department or that whomever is undertaking this review come back with some definitive thoughts around this issue, or some range of thoughts around this issue?
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what it is.
That's a great question in terms of next steps. I think it's in conjunction with supply chain services and with Joe's office that we would come back with some options. That's basically what the request is, so that we can make a decision about collectively what our intent is.
Okay, if there's any further consideration that might need to take place based on what they come back with.
Correct.
That's perfect. I assume that there's clarity with respect to the department around both what we seek and when we seek it.
The only clarity that I lack, frankly, is who within supply chain services is coordinating it on their side. So that is something that I can follow up with you, Marty, just so I can better understand that.
And we'd start with Aaron and let her form her team up. Joe, did you say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was Marty Shannon. I was going to say, Erin Henning's already looking at this, and she's already having conversations with Joe's office. So Aaron and the city attorney's office will be taking the lead on this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, and I assume that we can expect, I don't have the motion in front of me. Wait a minute, my book is closed, so I don't recall if we had a due back date.
No, there was not.
Then if we could have a due back by one of the August board meetings, that would be useful. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that.
So
would you like to, are there any other questions regarding this motion before we take it up?
it's not about that motion, but I'm a little confused because there was a whole report that came on supply chain services, and I did have a question about that. Is that a different item on the agenda? Or it's just informational and what?
Well, can we first finish this and then we
Yes.
can talk about that?
Okay.
So, is there a motion for item 21?
May I add a bit on the history?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry, Dr. Pickle. You did have comments on this one. Thank you.
This process of increasing this level of authority for the GM was an item that was discussed in efforts for DWP reform in 2016. And there were items that were included in a proposition that failed, and there were separate items that went ahead independently of that that measure put before the voters. And there were three components that spoke to that issue and were incorporated in the drafting of the ordinance that became the city authority to raise these limits. And Joe can correct me, and probably will have to correct me on some legal aspects of this, but the original motion before the Rules Committee that was passed by the council didn't specify special treatment for personal or professional services contracts. It was any contract up to 5 million. That limit was incorporated. We thought it was a mistake to incorporate that limit. Understand at the time, the authority for the GM was 150,000, which for question of scale, given DWP's budgets of between 7 and 8 billion, that's like having a family meeting for a house budgeting $1,000 a month for purchasing an item of 2.5 cents. So now this limit has been raised 33 times. So that's now having a family meeting for making a purchase of under $1. So this limit is still very low in terms of CEO authority. We did a survey in 16 of an informal survey in 16 of the lowest power utility CEO limits, and the lowest we could readily find was one for 15 million. So 5 million is still low, and not having personal services included is, I think, an inappropriate inefficiency. On the other hand, the ordinance and those motions were requesting quarterly reports, and in fact, a report on the overall performance of this ordinance was due at the end of February of this year to council and the board. And I think now is the time to get that overall report in motion so that it is addressed appropriately with the enabling ordinance. And we would like the quarterly reports that were supposed to occur on this to occur as a regular management report item on the contracts over 150,000 and up to the limits provided to have that occur quarterly.
So a couple things. Thank you. As always, you illuminate the issue in a very productive way. With respect to the quarterly reports, I'm not sure that are these reports that just aren't done currently?
Maybe they're posted on the procurement website. I haven't done looking for that, but there were supposed to be quarterly reports on GM contracting.
Okay.
So, but instead, I prefer it be a board report offered quarterly.
Yeah, I was going to say, so why don't we do this? Why don't we include your observations and additional perspective and context in the overall report back? I mean, as we develop the overall report back, I am very interested in it reflecting the history of this provision and the context that Dr. Pickle has just laid out as it relates to both authority and limitations on that authority and benchmarking across other utilities, other sort of, and the industry benchmark. I think that that's important. It's also important to note that we are limited by council ordinance, it sounds like, to the 5 million, but the 150,000 seems to be something that the board's done. I mean, I'm not clear where that came from.
This is where I would defer to Joe, because I believe that ordinance went through a number of drafts, and the professional services component may be one of the things that is in that ordinance.
So it did go through a number of reiterations, but
I don't know if it's just me, but I can't make out anything anybody's saying. It's distorted. Okay, could you go again?
it did go through a number of reiterations, but in none of those did they ever define any of the terms. So you do have dollar caps, and those dollar caps are well defined, but the terms professional services and personal services are not defined, and sometime leave you scratching your head as to what they actually mean.
Okay, great. Thank you. It sounds like we've got some, some cleanup work and perhaps some better design to get to a more rational outcome. And then with respect to quarterly reports, this June represents the end of a quarter. So it would be useful to see a report, if not on the June agenda, not on the next meeting's agenda, certainly on the first agenda for the following meeting. And thereafter, quarterly board reports should be something that is delivered on a routine basis.
I'd suggest that be the first meeting in the month following the end of the quarter, because there's a city ethics requirement for contract reporting that occurs by the end of the month, and so it could be one move.
So August would be the report date for this quarter, since we may well be dark for all of July, so August, in any event, would be the right month. Okay. Now, given that, are we ready to have a motion on this item?
I move approval.
Second.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, Commissioner Lehr, there's an agenda item or something that was in your board packet that you wanted to discuss?
Well, I think I could maybe just ask for a briefing later, but there was a board, it's called Ordinance 185471, and it was a quarterly report to us for the Supply Chain Services Contracting Quarterly Report.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I would like to request, yes, so I just want to highlight that, I want to highlight the aspect that's important to me, which is local business, in which we are very low. We're in terms of percentage of awards to local businesses. So I just, maybe we could, I could have a brief, a briefing with somebody before I bring it back up. So I want to understand this better.
Okay, terrific. Then if we could, that's great. And I am certain that supply chain will follow up with you. Can we then have you recuse yourself? We have 2 items remaining on the agenda that need to take up, and we will meet you in executive session or in closed session, I'm sorry. So at this time, we have items 19 and 20. Okay, she didn't leave the room, the meeting, but she left the room. So I assume, Joe, that will suffice, correct?
That will suffice.
Perfect. Is there a motion for items 19 and 20?
So moved.
I'll second.
Take the vote. President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
3 ayes.
That concludes our public agenda. Those motions have, or those items have passed. Mr. Brevich?
Everybody who's participating in closed session has the WebEx login for that. Commissioner, shall we say 1:45 for the closed session?
Let's say 1:50 so that the board staff that has to sprint from one place to the other doesn't take my head off when the meeting's over. Let's give them
Very
a little
good.
time to handle the logistics.
Very good.
So
Then
if we can get back at 1:50, that would be terrific.
great.
And
Then at this point, in accordance with the California Government Code section, we will recess in a closed session to address the items on agenda item 22. And in accordance with California Government Code section 54957.1, we will report any final actions taken therein. We are now in recess till 1:50. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Please remain silent while all mics are turned off. Thank you.